But right now we've got Jamie Partridge. Welcome to the program, Jamie.
Thank you, Jim.
I think it was this program you were on once before.
I've been here before. Thank you very much.
Yes, you have, and you're welcome back. I mean, you've nothing's changed. And you're still a retired letter carrier.
That much has not changed.
That much has changed.
Other things have changed.
Other things have changed. What has changed then?
What has changed? Well, I'm here to talk about the tragedy that's facing the U.S. Postal Service. And what's happened since July 1st of last year is that the Postmaster General has been on a tear to close postal mail processing plants and post offices. He closed 48 mail processing plants during the summer, eliminating 13,000 jobs.
And that's what you were here to talk about back then.
10% of the mail processing plants went down, none of them in Oregon. Now he's announced that he's going to close another 99 plants between now and June.
Oh my gosh.
One of which is in Salem. That's another 20% of the mail processing plants. His goal overall by January of 2014 is to close half the mail processing plants in the country. He's already changed the mail delivery standards so that first-class overnight mail is going away. That is, you used to be able to put a letter in the box one day and it would arrive in the same town the next day.
It happened all the time.
Well, if we don't stop him from closing down the Salem plant in June, they mail a letter from one side of Salem to the other side of Salem. It goes all the way to Portland to be processed and then all the way back to Salem to be delivered. It's going to delay the mail a day, two, and then of course he's been cutting the hours of rural post offices. He's gone after half the rural post offices in the nation. There are 13,000 post offices, and half of them, 6,500 of them, have already had their hours reduced by 25 to 75%, which means eliminating full-time postmaster positions in these mostly rural areas. In Oregon, he targeted 124 rural post offices, but because of our fight back, that is people organizing town to town, I think there's only been about 6 that have had their hours reduced, lost their postmasters, and those were generally towns where a postmaster there was a vacancy and they weren't filling it, already, or where generally that was what it was, and where people in the town were not organized. We found that when people get together and fight these closures and cuts, that the Postal Service backs off. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and. That's why I'm involved. That's what I'm involved with, is this fight back to try to save the Postal Service.
Well, yeah, you're very involved with it. You've gone back to D.C. a couple times, I think.
I have.
And rally, because there's rallies going on there as well.
Yeah, it was a little unusual what we did. We did a hunger strike in June, where there was letter carriers and clerks and mail handlers and truck drivers, postal truck drivers and retirees and some people from Occupy who staged a hunger strike to turn up the heat, put up the pressure on Congress, because Congress is ultimately responsible for this disaster, what's happening to the Postal Service. Congress it's not the internet, it's not competition, it's not labor costs, it's not the recession. It's Congress that imposed a mandate on the Postal Service back in 2006 that's forcing it into bankruptcy. That's basically starving the Postal Service, milking money from the Postal Service by mandating that it pre-fund retiree health benefits 75 years in advance within 10 years. So that 10% of the postal budget goes to pre-fund retiree health benefits for people who not only don't work for the Postal Service, they're not even born yet. And no other company would do that. I mean, no agency has to do that. And
no for-profit corporation.
This was done in in the dead of the night on a voice vote in a lame duck Congress, and you kind of wonder, well, where did this come from? And we find out that it was the American Legislative Exchange Council was these folks who are attempting to privatize, union bust and privatize public services, and they're doing it state by state, but this is the big kahuna. This is the second largest employer in the country. It's the largest unionized industry in the country, 400,000 union employees, and it does a $63 billion business every year, and You know, the 1% would love to get their hands on the profitable portions of the Postal Service, and they'll do it. They're driving it into the ground so that the public will get to the point where they'll say, well, private sector could do it better, I'm sure. And the latest stage in this plan is that the Postmaster General just announced that he was going to eliminate Saturday delivery by August, which would
cut hours at least.
it would cut 1/6 of the postal workforce, 80,000 jobs, and it would definitely slow the mail and hurt the most vulnerable populations, which are people who depend on prescription drugs, like veterans and the elderly, and folks in rural areas in particular who really depend on the mail. People in low-income neighborhoods who aren't as connected to the internet, folks who run small businesses that use the mail to get supplies, to get their product out, and community newspapers that depend on a timely delivery of the mail, like Saturday delivery. And
that was the main question I was going to ask you. Is I asked myself, I don't care if I don't get it on Saturday, but I'm sure that it has repercussions, serious, and like I didn't think about rural and medications that won't be there till the following Monday.
Right.
There's an incredible amount of consequences that are very, very dire in some cases.
Yeah, and because letter carriers look in on the frail and elderly, particularly in rural areas, but also in the cities. I know when I was a letter carrier, there were a number of people who would come to the door, or I would knock on the door every day because they were disabled or elderly, and I might be the only person that they see during the day. Saturday is generally the day that a letter carrier will see the people that they deliver the mail to. That relationship develops, and you find out what people's individual needs are. Cutting out Saturday delivery will, and it's not just cutting out Saturday delivery. If the Postmaster General accomplishes this, he will have changed the law, what's been in place for 150 years, 6 days of free city delivery, and he can shrink it to 5 days, to 4 days, to 3 days. And what we've seen in other countries where they've actually gone to privatizing the mail is like in Holland and the Netherlands, they deliver mail 3 days a week.
So how do the people that depend upon the mail, how do they respond to that?
Well, people are up in arms around the country, as you can imagine, and there's a lot of organizing going on, trying to Congress is actually, a lot of Congress people have expressed dismay that the Postmaster General is actually breaking the law. The law says that the Postal Service is mandated to deliver 6 days a week, and that law is renewed every year in what's called a continuing resolution as part of the budget appropriation process. And so on March 27th of this year, it'll come up for renewal. So there's a lot of stirring. We're doing a lot of organizing to make sure that Congress does the right thing. But even the Postmaster General seems to on a tear. He seems like even if Congress mandates again 6-day delivery, that he's going to go ahead.
How can he be above the law like that?
Good question. Good question. But I'll tell you, he's already broken the law twice last year and got away with it. And I'll tell you what happened. This mandate that the Postal Service pre-fund retiree health benefits 75 years in advance comes in the form of a payment that has to happen every year of $5.5 billion. Well, twice in a row, for the 2012 payment and the 2013 payment, Postmaster General did not make the payment. He said, we're out of money, we can't pay it. Nobody did anything. Nobody, sued him or, tried to fire him or anything like that. So he's
that
gotten
money
away
was
with
going into a fund. You're saying that $5 billion went into a fund.
Right. Yeah, and that fund, there's like $45 billion in that fund. It's way overfunded. Nothing's going to happen in terms of the operation of the Postal Service if he doesn't make those payments. But it was contrary to the law that he did. So in some respects, it looks like he's trying to cut all kinds of corners because he's got an agenda, and he says that he has to do it because he says the Postal Service is going bankrupt, it's in debt, and all this. But we say, wait for the Congress to act. You should be using all of your time and energy pushing Congress, to do the right thing,
keep it afloat.
Yeah, and in fact, what's happened with the moves that he's made is he's causing the Postal Service to lose revenue, with these plant closures and the delay of the mail, and then of course
making it worse.
Yeah, so that big mailers like some of the magazines like Time Warner and Bloomberg News are deciding to use private delivery because they can't count on the Postal Service to get their mail, their product in a timely manner to the customer. So it's like this spiral, as he cuts service, then customers leave and maybe decide that their magazine is going to go online from now on. They're not going to print it anymore, that kind of thing. So more and more businesses leave the Postal Service, so less and less revenue, and so there's this downward spiral. And we're trying to rally a movement, big enough, broad enough, and deep enough that we can save the Postal Service. I mean, it's mandated in the Constitution. It's older. The Postal Service is older than the country itself. It was originally organized to bind the country together, in commerce and communication. But actually, it was a revolutionary institution. It was Franklin headed it up to help the flow of correspondence, the committees of correspondence, which made the organizing of the American Revolution. And right from the get-go, there was subsidies for newspaper delivery. That the founders knew that full communication, all kinds of different points of view, were necessary for the survival of the Republic, and that's what the Postal Service accomplishes: is universal access. Everybody pays the same. Whether you're in the outback in Alaska or down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, if you're one of the 150 million families or points of delivery, you get mail 6 days a week at the most affordable and most efficient in the world. And the 46 cents for a first-class letter is the lowest in the world. You go someplace else and you're paying $1 or more.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And if the Postal Service gets privatized, that's what people will be paying. They'll be paying for less service and higher prices.
It seems like whenever things are privatized, that's what happens. We get all these great promises, but a year or two when the dust settles, it's always that way. There's a lot to be said for we should be going the other way. I mean, some of these things, we should have profit motive taken out of healthcare. We should have profit motive taken out of utilities. Some of these things, and and thanks to the American Legislative Exchange Commission, they are, like you said, mainly in the states, passing laws that are making it more difficult and privatizing. But I didn't realize they were behind this. Is this postmaster been postmaster since this law was passed in 2006?
No.
So this was on somebody else's watch then.
Yeah. He's only been around for a couple of years, but
he was appointed.
Yeah, he's hired by the Postal Board of Governors, and the Postal Board of Governors is appointed by the President, and the majority of the Postal Board of Governors was appointed during the Bush administration, and they're political hacks. They're folks that are giving appointments because they're in cahoots with the President, and they don't have any expertise about the Postal Service, and most of them want to see it privatized. In fact, James C. Millard III, who is the leader on the Postal Board of Governors, was the privatization czar under Ronald Reagan. He's been advocating privatization of the Postal Service for 30 years.
30 years, yeah.
Yeah. So we're up against some tough enemies, and unfortunately, we don't have a friend in the President, Barack Obama. He has already twice stated that he thought the Postal Service should be allowed to go to 5-day delivery. And he thought that it might be important to cut pensions, cut workers' compensation, that sort of thing. He has the power through an executive order to fix the finances. There's not only this 45 billion in the the retiree health benefits fund, but there's also about 100 billion in overfunded pensions. The Office of the Inspector General of the Postal Service and the Postal Regulatory Commission both did independent studies and found that because of miscalculation of retirement expenses, the Postal Service has been putting more money than is needed into these pensions funds for, well, since 1971. And so here's this huge amount of money that's sitting in these funds, or maybe it isn't sitting there, it's probably been spent in Afghanistan for whatever we know. Yeah, but, that could be used to not only for operating expenses, but to expand Postal Service. I mean, it's true that the internet is having an impact on first-class mail.
Of course.
There's been a decline of about 5% per year for the last maybe 5-6 years. But there's also been an increase in, because of online shopping, in parcel delivery. But there's also other things that could bring in more revenue and could provide more service, such as it happened in other countries, like postal banking. We used to have small deposit postal banking in this country for about 50 years, up until 1967, and especially during the Great Depression. People, when they didn't trust banks, but they trusted their postal service, and they would use deposit and savings, and their every neighborhood, every small town had a post office, right? Mm-hmm. Could bring that back. We could provide one-stop government services in post offices. From fishing and hunting licenses to well, now we already have passports, but you could apply for Social Security or whatever, mm-hmm. Food stamps, and
especially in rural areas,
yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I spent last August traveling around the state, visiting with people in different rural towns who are organizing to save their post offices, and sometimes the post office is the only public building. Mm-hmm. The school's closed, especially in these timber towns, the library's closed, and the post office is the place, the government spot. And, people don't have access to notary services or to copying or printing or internet. All those things could be provided at post offices. Mm-hmm. But they're being, it's restricted right now.
They're being shut down.
Yeah, but in other countries they do that. And it's really funny what's happening. The Postmaster General just announced that he was going to, and has started experimenting with same-day delivery in some cities, where using digital communication, where a customer can order from a local shop, a retail, and the letter carrier will pick up the product and deliver it that same day. Well, that's great. That should be expanded. The Postmaster General announced that he wanted to have parcel delivery 7 days a week. That's great. We should have, mail delivery 7 days a week. We should have post office hours in the evening, when people who work during the day can mm-hmm. get there. You should have at least 1 day a week, 24-hour post office open. That's the kind of thing that we're advocating. That in we have a nationwide network called Communities and Postal Workers United, and we want to see an expansion of service, not a contraction of service.
Well, you're rising to meet the issue. It seems to me that the Postmaster General is not thinking outside the box and is just going in and shutting it down when there are other alternatives.
There are other alternatives.
And he's not even trying to entertain any of these alternatives?
Well, that's what's so strange is that, as I said, he's experimenting with same-day delivery, and he's calling for 7-day delivery of packages. At the same time, he's calling for an end to Saturday delivery of mail and closing down half the mail processing plants. If he goes forward with closing half the mail processing plants, I mean, not only would he be eliminating 100,000 jobs, good paying, union jobs. And let me just say something about that, which is that the Postal Service, I mean, doesn't just eliminating those 100,000 jobs. It's not like one factory in one town. It's like in every town there are postal workers, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not just that individual worker or that family or even that community that's impacted by the loss of those jobs, but in particular, veterans. The Postal Service gives veterans preference in hiring, so it's 25% veterans. African Americans, 21% of postal workers are African American. 8% Latino, 8% Asian. So a lot of immigrant workers that were at the Postal Service. So a lot of these vulnerable communities,
a lot of women, I'll bet,
which
too.
Depend on, excuse me.
Oops. A lot of women as well, I'm sure.
Right, 30% women. These communities where a postal job is really the backbone of these communities, which tend to be lower income than other communities. But so if all these plants go down and these jobs are lost, not only are these communities impacted because of the lost jobs, but in Oregon, they're looking at closing Salem, as I said, and Springfield, Eugene, Springfield, and Pendleton and Bend, so that the only mail processing plants will be in Portland and in Medford.
Extreme ends of the state.
Yeah, and so you can imagine somebody trying to mail a letter from Eugene to Springfield, and it has to be trucked all the way up to Portland and then all the way back to Springfield.
It's going to be. Someone wanted to mail something from Ontario to Baker, which is just 60 miles apart.
Right, have to come all to Portland. Yeah, which is crazy. I mean, the Postal Service, in their study of what the savings from shutting down these plants, didn't take into account the fact that what it'll cost to transport the mail all the way to the next city. Or the pollution that you're putting in the air.
The carbon footprint.
Goes up. Go way up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a bad plan all around, but unfortunately the public gets the impression that it's inevitable, and it's just like the horse and buggy. It goes away. But in fact.
But it's not a horse and buggy.
Yeah, what's happened is the Postal Service is putting forward a very disingenuous propaganda. I'll have to say that the public supports eliminating Saturday delivery.
80%. I was just looking it up today.
Yeah. Well, if you go to savethepostoffice.com, www.savethepostoffice.com, it's a wonderful website which debunks a lot of this Postal Service propaganda. And what they said, they just came out with their own survey. They said, if you look at the Postal Service survey, what they do is they say, if you knew that the Postal Service was losing $15 billion a year and could save money by eliminating Saturday delivery, would you be in favor of eliminating Saturday delivery? So they're giving people this scare.
The answer's in the question.
The answer is in the question, leading question, right?
Yeah.
And then so of course the SaveThePostOffice.com put out their own survey saying, if you knew that Congress could fix the problem by eliminating this pre-funding mandate, and it wouldn't be financially necessary, would you favor eliminating Saturday delivery? And so they're putting out their own. They're putting out their own survey.
Probably not no 80% at that point.
Of course not. Of course not.
This fixed the problem. Is what.
If people understood how many populations depend on Saturday delivery, and folks are maybe upset about getting advertising mail, in their mailbox, but we put up with commercials on TV. It's
20 minutes an hour.
We put up with commercials on the internet. It's kind of like the price you pay for having a service that is actually self-supporting. The Postal Service runs on no tax dollars. It hasn't since 1971, which may be a mistake, but in any case, it doesn't. take any tax dollars, and so it does depend on generating revenue through things like advertising.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about how all these layoffs just doesn't affect the city like a plant closure or whatever. That cripples the country. But it also occurs to me that all these union jobs are lost. That's a powerful union. It also would affect the strength of the other unions as well, I would think.
Oh, absolutely.
To some degree.
Yeah, and we know, looking back the history of the labor movement, that in 1980, when President Reagan fired all the air traffic controllers,
I remember that.
Had a huge impact on the labor movement, and there was kind of a signal to employers to go after unions, and there was a tremendous downturn in strike activity and in unionization, and to take out 400,000 unionized jobs that are in the Postal Service at this time would have a huge dampening effect on the labor movement, just like what happened with the restructuring of the auto industry. Now the starting pay for an auto worker since the restructuring, after the crisis and the bailout and all that, the starting wage is half of what it used to be, and so why would you join a union? If it means that you're gonna end up getting half the wages that they used to have,
probably as well.
Right, and so actually what's happening is that the union shops are actually more competitive than the non-union shops at this time, and so anyway, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, the one of the aspects of this phony crisis, this fake financial crisis in the Postal Service, is that there was an arbitration of a letter carrier union contract that just came down last week, 2 weeks ago, where starting workers are getting their wages cut by 27%. Yeah.
That's $1 out of 4.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're making $12 an hour, that's $3 off? Something like that.
Yeah, so it's a big hit, and
so what kind of arbitration is that?
So what happens is that the Postal Service makes the case to an arbitrator, and let me first say that postal workers are not allowed to strike by law.
Right, you're federal employees.
Yeah, so when there's an inability to settle in negotiations, it goes to an arbitrator who, the Postal Service made the case that it was losing money and the Congress wasn't acting. So the arbitrator said, okay, we'll give you a much lower wage for 15% of the workforce.
Well, they didn't have the power to deal with a real problem, though, as an arbitrator.
Right.
Theirs was just dealing with wages. Is
exactly.
All they could do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of a slam dunk on that one.
Yeah. So we have folks, for example, in the Portland area that I talked to, who actually there's this category of letter carrier called now that's 15% of the workforce called city carrier assistant, which formerly were called transitional employees, but in any case they're moving from being temporary to being career, which is a good thing. But some of these folks have been working for 4, 5, 6 years as temps, right? And now they're getting a cut of 27% to their wages. Some of these folks are going to end up on food stamps because they're supporting families.
They'll be in line with the Walmart workers.
Yeah, which brings me to another subject that I wanted to introduce to your viewers, which is that we want letter carriers and community and postal workers in the community to look at the history and how we can make this fight to win it, and look at what happened in 1970 when postal workers were on food stamps because they were making such low wages, they did strike.
I worked for them in '67 and I was making $2.65 an hour.
Yeah. Well, in New York City in 1970, a significant number of postal workers were on welfare or had to take a second job to support their families. And despite the fact that it was illegal and they could be thrown in jail for striking, New York postal workers went out on strike, and it spread like wildfire around the country. It was a wildcat strike. The union leadership attempted to get people to go back to work. President Nixon called out 25,000 troops to try to deliver the mail. But of course, and National Guard, and of course a lot of these National Guard people were postal workers.
The postal workers, right.
So they, kind of mucked it up, and it didn't happen. The mail didn't get delivered, and after 5 days, the strike was successful. And I'd love to have have you put up on the screen
the graphic about this.
We have the details. What we're going to do is show a video of the Great Postal Strike of 1970 at our Union Hall, Letter Carriers Union Hall, a week from tomorrow evening, and have a discussion about what's it going to take to stop this destruction of the Postal Service. And in my opinion, it's going to take something really dramatic like this strike of 1970, which, as I said, was successful. They all got their jobs back. They got significant raises, and they got collective bargaining for wages and benefits. They got all kinds of protections that the postal workers enjoy today. So that now, postal workers are some of the best paid, best benefited union workers in the country, and it's because of the ability to withhold labor and disrupt business as usual. Now, there are other ways of disrupting business as usual besides a strike, and of course, people should be thinking about that. How much time do we have? Where are we?
Oh, we got about nine minutes. Actually.
Oh, okay. So I want to make sure to talk about this too. But
we've got time, sure.
Okay.
I'm glad we brought this up, and this is a strike. Was part of the reason it was effective, the strike, was because it educated the people, I would imagine, as well.
Well, it certainly educated the public, but
That's what I mean, yeah.
What was and educated Congress, because what provoked it was that prior to that time, postal workers only had to beg Congress for a raise. They basically didn't have collective bargaining rights, and so Congress had given them a raise, just a puny raise under the rate of inflation. So basically a pay cut. And it just enraged postal workers, and going on strike certainly educated the public. But what was interesting about that time, if you remember 1970, you and I lived through that period. There was a tremendous period of social turmoil, and actually black postal workers were at the center of that strike. It was the kind of at the height of the Black Power movement. If you look at some of these photos, you look at some of the picket lines. People got the afros, and there's the Black Power salute, and also it was at the time of this anti-war movement. People were in the streets demanding their rights, and there was a lot of strikes going on, and public employees were striking, even though it was illegal. Teachers were striking. Transit workers were striking, sanitation workers were striking, even though it was illegal. So that, postal workers, they were part of that. Now, the question is whether the ferment in society, with things like the Occupy movement or the Walmart strikes, that kind of thing going on, are enough to inspire this kind of resistance. And I'll tell you that we've been hearing rumors, and I won't make any specifics, but the Postmaster General is also planning to contract out postal trucking, 7,000 jobs in the country that are the truckers that deliver the mail from post office to post office, or from the plant to the post office.
They're along the freeway.
Or along the freeway, right.
Yeah.
So in California and on the East Coast, they had set to completely eliminate those jobs and turn it over to private companies. That was supposed to take place in November, and what they ended up doing was the union filed a grievance, and that's going to be settled maybe in the beginning of March. But if it gets settled against the workers, some of them are talking about taking pretty drastic action, like blockades and that sort of thing. So that might be what it takes. That might be what it takes. And these plants, these workers in these plants they're going to lose their jobs. They might be inspired to, occupy their plants. I don't know. I'm not going to say, but it's certainly the kind of activity that I think that's going to be necessary. As you mentioned, we have our group, Communities and Postal Workers United, has done some pretty dramatic action to not only draw public attention. We occupied a post office here in Portland that was twice, actually, that we didn't successfully stop it from closing. The University Station is now closed.
I remember taping
but
that.
10 of us were arrested occupying that post office. But our hunger strike we did another hunger strike in December on the National Mall when the Lame Duck Congress was threatening to cripple the postal eagle by going to 5-day delivery. And we were marching through the halls of Congress every day with our hunger strike. And fortunately, they didn't, but now the Postmaster General is going forward with the same plan of eliminating Saturday delivery.
Yeah, it just seems to me that this is necessary to do. I mean, if you don't step up, you know, by whatever means possible, by whatever means necessary, nothing's going to change.
Well, let me mention a family-friendly event that doesn't involve civil disobedience, but on Sunday, March 17th, which is not this Sunday, February 17th, but a month from this Sunday, March 17th, which is the anniversary of the Great Postal Strike of 1970, also St. Patrick's Day. How are we doing for time?
Well, we got 4 minutes.
Okay.
We're doing good.
So I want to invite your viewers to join us downtown at Pioneer Courthouse Square at 2 p.m. And I think I gave the information to your folks.
It's up there right now.
Oh, great. Okay. So you can see we're meeting at Pioneer Courthouse Square and marching to the main office. And last year on January 8th, we did the same thing, and we had about 1,000 people involved. It wasn't enough to knock Congress off the dime, but so we want to build it bigger.
Build it bigger.
And we've been getting around and talking to different groups. And if your viewers are interested in having one of us come and speak to your group about what's happening with the Postal Service and invite people to be part of this march and rally, please give us a call. Can I just say what my phone number is?
Sure.
This phone that just went off is 503-752-5112. And we can arrange to have someone come out and speak to your group. And we'll get you some flyers, you know.
503-752-5112.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And you know, can folks pick up some of this information from any website like this one right here?
Yes. It's our Communities and Postal Workers United website, and it's www.cpwunited.com.
So that's 2 U's there then? No, just
CPW United. UNITED.com.
Right. Wish we'd have got that up on a graphic, but we didn't make that.
They're all different local coalitions. That's the national website, but you can go to the local coalition page, and it has all the different information about our local coalitions and how to get a hold of us and what's happening.
Right, because there will be different dynamics in different states, and you probably this one on Sunday, March 17th. That you just discussed. I imagine this might be going on in other cities.
Well, yes, we're doing it in cities across the country, and different people are doing different things. We don't have a St. Patrick's Day parade in Portland, but for instance, they have one in San Francisco, and we're going to have a float with a three-headed snake with the Postmaster General, one of the Congress people, Isa, who's the worst, and James C. Miller III on the Postmaster, and the slogan is "Drive the snakes out of the Postal Service." Like St. Patrick drove the snakes out of Ireland.
That's very good. But it was a whole lot more I wanted to bring up, because you said you went to. We got a little minute and a half. You said you went to Congress for this strike and this hunger strike and all that. They need to be woke up, but the media needs to be woke up as well. And so I'm sure you've been trying to get that on board as well.
Well, we appreciate your inviting us on your program a number of times. That's very helpful. And we do it, it's tough because the mainstream media parrots the line. They believe that the Postmaster General has the best interests of the post office at heart, but he doesn't.
He's got Alec at
yeah.
He's got Alec.
He's got a different agenda.
He's got a different agenda completely.
Yeah.
Well,
can I mention the
just
bill?
going to say you got about 30 seconds.
Okay,
here,
there are two bills that just got introduced. One by our own Peter DeFazio. That's HR 630, and on the Senate side, S 316. Both of our senators are on board. That is Wyden and Merkley with S 316, but none of our, except for DeFazio, are on board with on the House side HR 630. So if you can contact your Congress people, Blumenauer, Schrader, Bonamici, Walden, and ask them to support ask them to support HR 630, which will fix the postal finances and allow the post office to have broader products and services.
All right, so we're down to about 12 seconds. I guess we're going to have to call it quits there. We could go on, but we don't have the time. I want to thank the crew, and thank you for coming on and bringing us up to date with this.
Thank you, Jim.